how's it going? Oh, about to go live. We're clicking the button.
Oh God, okay.
Okay,
I'm
so
ready.
I'm just gonna say, hey. Okay, so I think we're gonna be on and just say welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our second Women in Animation Bay Area chapter YouTube Q&A. Whew. Our hope is for this series to provide some education, resources, and a little bit of entertainment to those amazing women and non-binary folk who want to pursue and thrive in the animation industry. So please subscribe and put down questions or topics you want us to talk about, and we will do our best. Okay, without further ado, it's my privilege to introduce you to Paige Johnstone. She's currently working at Pixar, but is also part of multiple outside projects. And I think I'll leave it at that and ask Paige our first question. So Paige, do you mind giving me a couple quick facts about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi. So I'm Paige. I'm originally from LA. I've been working in animation for about 5 years now, a little over 5 years. I just hit my 3-year Pixar anniversary,
Hey.
like a little over a month ago. Yeah, I love baking on the side. It's like really relaxing and whenever I'm not working in production. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Very cool. And so, why are you in production management? I know we kind of talked about your history a little bit and that wasn't your original path. So what led you here? And also, what is production management, if you wouldn't mind saying so?
Yeah. So my background is in cognitive science. That's what I studied in college. And I had actually planned to get a degree in neuroscience. And I had always kind of like taken film classes through college and high school. It was always something that was interesting.
Yeah.
And so I guess like I was applying for PhD programs and I was just like, let's try film. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
Which probably isn't the normal route, but it worked for me. And I don't know. I love production. And for those of you who don't know, production management, we're the people that like manage, inventory and quota and making sure everything is staying on track. Basically, like you have to know a lot about like waterfall schedules. Lots of schedules. Scheduling
Yeah.
is very important.
Google Sheets is your
Scheduling,
friend.
Google Sheets is your best friend. Um, so yeah, it's like we're the people that make things happen, um, and it's hard to describe what we do because we don't have like a reel to show. Like the reel is the department we worked in or the whole movie.
Oh, totally. And it's something where you manage so many teams and you're constantly moving from department to department. Do you want to talk about like what you found when you're moving from department to department and what helps you?
Yeah. So yeah, in animation, basically we have a full end-to-end pipeline. Um, and production management people are put into each department. So you'll usually have a production coordinator and a manager, sometimes a PA in the department. And basically, the skill set is the same, but every department you get thrown into, you have to learn something new. Basically, you're learning new technology, you're learning new people. It's never really the same underneath, but like the overarching things are all the same. So it's always fun and new.
Where you mentioned, you have this duality in your personality that you think really helps in this department, and it's just kind of about who you are. Do you want to explain a little bit about that duality?
Yeah. So I feel like personally, I'm really empathetic and I'm really at the same time like always wanting to crack the whip. So it's like this production is like good for me personally because it gives me like this sense of like honing into ever being like, okay, now that I know your needs, like what do we need to do to get everything done to make sure like, all the artists on my team are getting what they need and the production is getting everything it needs. which is just kind of a little bit, I think.
Oh, totally, totally. It's something where we had a bunch of baking puns here before, but it still goes hand in hand. It goes with the duality of baking. Making sure things are the right temperature, right? Wouldn't you say
Yes.
so?
Make sure that things are the right temperature.
It's something where, you kind of talk about your adaptability as well, and especially like during this time, like how do you want to talk about, how that kind of just is embraced in your day-to-day life in production?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of being in production management is you have to be adaptable. You have to be like ready for whatever is thrown at you. Like just some things that I've come across before is, like back when I was at DreamWorks, there were always kind of random like technical things that I would come up that I definitely didn't know how to do. But I would like
Yeah.
go to my local TD or go to whoever could give me an answer kind of and, search for that answer and search for how to figure it out to the point where like at some point I was just like running renders, like, I got to fix some motion blurs and, stuff like that where you're always kind of learning things and you're always needing to just like pick up the new technology or pick up whatever this department needs.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to, I know we talked about your original kind of jobs that you had where you weren't expecting to go into animation and you would just sit down with folks. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, so when I first started in entertainment, I actually started temping for kind of studios around LA, and this was back when I was in Los Angeles. So I was exposed to a lot of like the back end, kind of more development departments, a lot of live action stuff. Um, and I'm sorry, I lost track of what the question was.
Yeah, no
I was
worries.
going somewhere with that.
It's okay. We were just talking about how you would sit down with a bunch of people and you would ask
Yeah,
questions. You would ask them what they did, and yeah,
yeah. So that's where that was going. But yeah, I had the opportunity to like um be exposed to kind of like different studios and different types of production, like live action animation, VFX. So I was able to like sit down with people and kind of ask them what they did and how they did it and like what their roles were. And it was through that I found production management and kind of where I landed, where I was like, oh, I think this would be a good fit for me.
definitely. You really are able to communicate with people, and
Yeah.
that's all about production management. So kind of going into it, how do you feel like you've grown in this career?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like over the past 5 years, I've been exposed to like um, first of all, multiple studios, and that has given me kind of knowledge that things, don't always need to be done one way. That there's different ways of doing things, and I know like you've been at multiple studios as well, so you kind of know. Um, so I feel like I've grown because from every place and every direction, I get to take something new and like learn something new and, just kind of figure out ways that things can be done better or things can be done different or, just like always kind of picking at information. I feel like I'm the type of person that I will go out and seek out knowledge because I don't feel like that knowledge is always readily available to me. I
Mhm.
feel like I've never been in a position where things have just kind of, like been handed to me or that people have, given me full reign of things all the time. So I feel like I'm always like asking for more. I'm always, kind of like researching on the side, like what I can do to learn more. And that's, kind of how I started producing projects freelance.
Oh yeah. No, do you want to kind of tell us more about that and like as you continue on your path, like what kind of pieces of work that you're contributing to?
Yeah. Yeah. So in my background here, these are two projects I'm currently producing on this side, I think, is Canvas, that I'm producing with an animator at Pixar. And it's a short film. We're gearing up for a festival run right now, and hopefully going to do some screenings and some Q&As soon with that. And yeah, so we're like in post-production in that. It's been such a great experience because I've been exposed to so much I normally wouldn't be exposed to. It's like all of the overarching things that you're not thinking about or not allowed to kind of get more involved with in when you're, just a coordinator, or not just a coordinator, but when you're a coordinator or a PA. I've gotten a chance to get exposed to by just producing my own project.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's been really great. I feel like I've had a lot of creative input, which is nice. I feel like, like our director, he listens to the ideas I have, which is great. So it's really nice. It's a nice change of pace.
That's awesome. And so these are outside projects outside of Pixar. So you actually started this, when you met Frank at DreamWorks, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I didn't start working on this project at DreamWorks. Frank had already been working on it, but I met Frank at DreamWorks, and then he left DreamWorks. I left like a month after him, and I was like, "See, we're a package deal. You can't get rid of me."
Yeah.
And then, like a little bit after I started Pixar, I had seen some images that he posted on social media, and I just like needed to get involved. So it's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. Is it something where, as you continue to find all of these new projects, what kind of goes into that? You're not just producing Frank's short, but you're also producing multiple shorts, like the one on your other side. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you potentially say to a young production coordinator, production assistant, or just someone that's interested in production? What would you encourage them to do as they're looking for side projects to do outside of their normal day job?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are so many artists that have ideas, that have like, little doodles, or they like started writing a script, or, they visited somewhere and they came up with an idea, and they just don't know how to, put it into action.
Yeah.
And that's where producers and production management come into play. Like we make that stuff happen. So it's like Nicole, the director of Georgia and the Singing Mountain on this side. I think she had an idea, and she had some sketches, and she had this story that she wanted to tell, and I kind of started talking to her about it a little while ago, and we're like I got involved just to kind of make it happen. So I'd tell people, like, be on the lookout for stuff like that. Like she didn't necessarily invite me in or anything like that. Like she was happy to have me on board, but she wasn't, it's always like kind of me going up and being like, hey, do you have a producer? Do you need someone? Like I'd love to be involved. And I think just that willingness has I think made it like always apparent that like I want to learn, I want to be there. And I think that's always helpful going into situations like that.
Totally. Is it something where, again, we talk about your work at Pixar and going from department to department in production management, what are ways that you kind of get to know your team? Because that is the huge part of communication and how different teams work.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a good question, especially for current times. Normally, when I'm getting to know a team, I will literally just pop into their offices like an annoying little gnat you cannot get rid of. But I feel like that's what's helped me create great relationships, to the point where like I could go, to Frank and Nicole and say like, hey, like I'm interested in working on this. Like with Frank back at DreamWorks, I can't tell you how much time I spent sitting in his desk area. Like he would probably be like too much, but But that's how you create the relationships. And I think it's a piece of advice I was given when I first started as a PA was that I should never, as a PA, you should never go into a situation with like a notebook and or a laptop in front of you, because that creates a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're just getting to know someone, you want to just kind of like walk in and say like, hey, I'm gonna be working with you. I want you to feel comfortable coming to me, and like kind of creating the relationship from there. And then obviously later you bring your notebooks, because I'm sure you have to write stuff down.
Efficiency, but also,
Yeah. But
yeah.
it was great advice, and I think it's like it's helped me to this day, to where I pride myself on like being someone people can come to. Like I think I've created a lot of really great relationships. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries no worries at all. I mean, it's really great that you're able to do all of these amazing projects. You're working on multiple things. You kind of talk about, and we've talked about, how you do feel like multitasking is one of your strengths. Do you want to kind of talk about that and, ways that you've figured that out about yourself and so on?
Yes. Yeah. So I have noticed I am always like, between meetings, I'm like writing an email for Canvas, or like texting Frank or texting Nicole, or like I feel like I'm always doing multiple things. And I think in production it's like a blessing and a curse, because you feel like you have so much stuff on your plate, so you definitely like want to be able to like kind of get through things in an efficient manner, but it's also like so much stuff to come at you.
Yeah.
And I do feel like I'm pretty good at it. I'm always kind of waiting for the day when I just mess something.
Oh no.
But yeah, like I think I've got multitasking down pretty well. I mean, right now I'm working on 4 projects, so it's a lot. It's a lot of compartmentalizing, and always trying to like it helps that it's all animation for sure, because there's definitely like times where I'll be in something at Pixar, and then like something will come up and I'll be like, oh, that's good to note for this, for Canvas or for Georgia. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, and you like the processes and making sure that you're being effective with your leaders and, the people that are doing the creative, and making sure they, have that exact, you learn from the people that are around you in ways that to communicate effectively, and ways to track that make things easier for just all of your daily life.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
completely, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess going back a little bit, so as you continue on this path, what do you feel like is important to you?
um that is a great question.
Yeah.
I feel like there are several things that are really important to me. One of them, I'm not sure we talked about before, but that we probably have talked about in some respect, is um, it's really important to like that production is more um, is put forth more as like a very important department and
Mhm.
very important personnel to have on films. Like the PAs, the coordinators, the managers, like we're the people on the floor making sure things are getting done.
Yeah.
Like the animators and story artists and everyone, like they're important, and they're viewed as important because they're putting the content out. But at the same time, like we're the ones making sure that content is happening and that you're moving forward and that we're hitting our deadlines and we're getting this out into the world.
Yeah.
So something important to me is like making sure like those people are seen and heard, um and that like it is a more respected position, because I do sometimes feel like there is the producer or the associate producer, and no one like thinks about the coordinators, the PAs, or the managers, or the script supervisors.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of like the hidden people that are trying to contribute more.
Hmm.
um yeah, along those lines is just generally like bringing more diversity into, I mean, and specifically into animation, but into media in general.
Yeah.
These two projects I'm working on both feature Black lead characters, which was major reasons why I wanted to work on them. And I think it's important that, you know, diverse stories are told. I think I've heard someone say once at, you know, somewhere I worked that like people weren't like that people didn't know that these stories were things that people in the world wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And that kind of that really stuck with me. It was like, how, like, why wouldn't you think that? You know, like what would make you think that you know, a story like Coco wouldn't want to be heard? And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's super, super important to me.
That's super awesome. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like this right here. This is a moment, you know, for representing exactly what you're trying to bring about. It's bringing about and highlighting films that are voices that haven't been heard or heard enough. There are so many films out there. Kind of on a little bit of a through line with that, you know, we talk about you really wanting to be a mentor and sharing your voice. And would you mind explaining a little bit about your experience with mentorship and what you want to bring about?
Yeah, I think mentorship is so important. I think it's something that's maybe not put forth enough or not. I think you know, there's so much value in it. Um, for me, like with my experience, I don't feel like I've ever had like a true mentor. I definitely like have people around me who I bounce ideas off of all the time. There's definitely people I like, you know, I go to for like specific problems, but
Mm-hmm.
I've never really felt like I've had, you know, one specific person who I I can always like count on, or like who could really help me navigate what my career should be. It's all
Yeah.
so mystifying. I think like when I first started in production, I didn't know what producers did. Like, and there's days I still don't, you know. But it is this like really like, you know, elusive thing, like what a producer is and what a producer does. And
Yeah.
so like everything I learn, I want to be able to like pass on to other people who don't know, like who are in that same position I was first in, and who are like who don't feel like they're getting a chance to like, you know, be put forth, or that they're, you know, like the chosen ones, or, you know, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Yeah. The idea of like being seen and seeing exactly the potential in somebody, it's huge. It's that one chance that you have, and
Yeah,
there should be
exactly.
many chances.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you know, it's something where we again kind of talk about, you know, what you do and how hard you work. You know, it's something where like, did you find any struggles with that? With, you know, telling yourself like, hey, you're here and you're doing X amount of, you know, tasks. You know, how do you deal with that work, and how do you kind of personally, you know, make sure that you're there for yourself?
Yeah. Um yeah. I think I've definitely sorry, I'm trying to figure out the right way to phrase this. I definitely like think just in general I should have trusted myself more and my instincts more, like throughout my career thus far. Um, I do think, you know, like being a Black woman, like you have to work three times as hard just to be perceived as doing the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes feel like that's all I'm ever perceived as doing is just the bare minimum. Like I feel like I've been, you know, told I'm not top of the pack, and but also not given any reason as to why I'm not. Um, so it's always kind of questioning myself and like, what am I doing more? What do I need to change? But the more I grow and the more I learn, I don't feel like they're, you know, obviously like I want to keep growing, and I want I constantly ask for feedback because I want to know what I can do better, because I
Yeah.
feel like people can always be doing better and people can always be learning and growing. Um, so I think it's, you know, like some of that is in just trusting yourself and like knowing that what you're doing is right and you're not doing anything wrong, and that even if you aren't outwardly being valued by people, you know, at higher levels than you, that you should know your own value and know how hard you work.
Totally. It's something where, again, you just highlighted you're working on 4 projects. And on top of that, you bake. And on top of that, you know, they're delicious baking. It's cookies, it's everything. It's chocolate mousse, it's chocolate lava cake, like every day. It's really wonderful. You know, and it's something where that feeling is totally across the board with, I think, anybody that's in production. It's something where you're constantly trying to feel better. And the fact that it feels so much harder, it's like it shouldn't have to be. It shouldn't have to be. And, you know, you talk about, you know, who you are and how it took so long to just say that you were a producer. You know, like your role right now is a production coordinator, but you are producing these 2 outside projects. You know, do you want to talk about how you like eventually got there?
Yeah. On the subject of mentorship, I mentioned like there have been, you know, people who have, you know, obviously had my back, who I bounce ideas off all the time. It was some of it definitely came from them. Like I can't begin to take credit for all of it, but I think a lot of feeling comfortable, like saying I'm a producer, and you know, that's what I am. It came from a lot of like internal dialogue with myself. It came from a lot of like me looking at what I was doing and taking a step back and saying like, no, you're doing all of this stuff. Like you're definitely a producer. You're definitely worthy of this title. And I do, you know, going back to like a little bit what I was saying before, I do think a little bit of that is like breaking that elusiveness of what, you know, what a producer is and what a producer does. And yeah.
Totally.
I had another thought there and then it just whoop, disappeared.
Okay, thought train just going all out. I guess kind of going a little bit more into, you know, your past and, you know, all of the types of things that you talk about, you know, being a Black woman. It's something where, you know, that line that you have to kind of walk along. You know, do you want to kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I yeah, it's a fine line. I feel like if I am too loud, I am a sassy Black woman. If I am too quiet, we have this expectation of Black women to be louder, to be more able to take care of themselves, to be more adult than they actually are. So if I am not that, then I am seen as not doing enough or lazy or not being confident enough. I've been told multiple times that I'm should work on my confidence. I don't particularly feel that I'm a shy person.
No. What?
I don't feel that way, but I think there is this perception that's not really talked about that much, and I do feel like I've fallen into that a lot. You know, like I grew up. My mom is like very outspoken. She's very boisterous and very, you know, loud. And I think some of my personality comes from, you know, growing up around her and being a little more shy and a little more timid because, you know, like she was the one out there talking, which is like great. And, you know, the older I get, the more I'm like her in those ways where I'm just like, okay, well, if this is what people want, this is what they're getting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a fine line because it's constantly that question in the back of your mind is am I being too Black right now? Am I being, you know, like how is this coming across to everyone else? How am I being perceived? So it's like always having to deal with that question while also just doing your job.
And going back, it's that whole thing of taking the temperature of everywhere you go, right?
Yeah. Taking the temperature of the mousse and the cookies and the cake.
Making sure it's the right level.
Okay.
Can't disturb the baked goods. Can't disturb them. Awesome. Well, I guess, it's something where, we talked a lot about you and, what you've done, over the course of your career thus far. There's still so much to do. What would you tell your past self if you had the opportunity?
Yeah. I would, definitely tell my past self to like to speak up more, to trust myself more. I think I definitely used to be shy and I definitely used to be a little quieter. And I think now maybe that my quietness when I am quiet is kind of perceived as maybe I'm not paying enough attention, or that I'm not that I'm, not confident enough, going back to that. Whereas I'm just not the type of person where I feel like I need to interject everybody, like that's just not who I am. So I think I tell myself like to, be a little, push a little more, be a little louder. Definitely I would tell myself that my opinions are valid and they matter. Like I can't describe how many meetings I've been in where I've had an idea, but I didn't feel like I needed, to say anything at the time. And, I definitely could have. And I think, like, yeah, trusting myself more.
Yeah. Do you have any
I've got great ideas?
Yes, agreed. Is it something where like, are there any like artists that inspire you that, you would feel like add to that at all?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like I think the older I get, like the more I I do look to kind of the sources of inspiration. Like, Beyonce is obviously a big one for me. I just think she's she's just everything you want to be, right? Like,
Yeah.
she's confident, she's beautiful, she just knows the best. I was gonna say a bad word and I didn't. She knows she's the best, and I think that's something that's always been in me, where I'm like, I know I'm good. I know I'm good at my job. I know I've got a lot to offer.
Yeah.
I just want to be given that chance. And it, really came to me reaching out to other people and working on different projects to be like, no, I deserve this chance. I should just take it. Yeah.
Totally. And is it something where, obviously we do have those bad days. We do have those experiences that can make us feel like the world has ended, and what do you feel like your experience with those days has kind of led you to?
Yeah, I think it always kind of, when I have bad days, there's always like a moment where I just like accept it in a way where I'm like, this is fine. This is just gonna be it, and I'm not gonna achieve more. And I give myself like a minute to believe that, and then I'm like, absolutely not. Like, get back on the horse. It's gonna be fine. Remind yourself of everything you're doing right, which is so important. I think people in general just don't give themselves enough credit. It's I think, oh gosh, what was I watching? I was watching something. I can't remember what. But or maybe it was like a meme or something. It was one of the two. Anyway, the gist of it,
Something online
is like, would you be as mean to someone else as you would be to yourself? And like, I am always mean to myself. Like, I'm so mean to myself. And it's taken me getting older to be, nicer to myself and like say, you're doing a good job, you're doing good work. Like you're gonna be seen, you're gonna be heard. Like you just have to keep fighting. You have to keep going for it.
Yeah. Would you say that that's like, your inner strength?
That is my inner strength.
Yeah.
I'm not a quitter. I do joke with Frank like every few days. I'm like, I quit. I'm not doing it anymore. But no, I am totally not a quitter. It is not in me. I cannot do it. I'm very much like, I will keep pushing and pushing and pushing until I make things happen. And that is definitely my inner strength. I don't give up.
Yeah. and you fight for what you want.
Yeah.
And you're going to continue to fight for it, and you're going to make those opportunities for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, honestly, if you're not getting an opportunity, like make an opportunity for yourself, find that opportunity, like start reaching out to people. Like we have Instagram and Facebook and, Vimeo and TikTok. I don't get TikTok yet, but I'll try. I'll get there.
We like just were above that wavelength. Like it was Musically first. It wasn't TikTok.
I almost said MySpace for a second, and I was like, no.
That was...
MySpace, no. But yeah, there's so much out there. Like you can Google like artists to work with, or there's websites where you can like collaborate on films together. And I think just like reaching out to people is just such a great start. Like so many people want to work with people that are new. Like one thing that Nicole and I, the director of Georgia and the Singing Mountain, one thing we've worked on is to try to make sure we're like getting new people in, like, and to get, diverse people working. But like, we love taking people who are green because we want them to have an opportunity to learn and like to be seen. And I think it's from, obviously from both of us, like not getting those opportunities, like we know what to look for.
Totally. Is it something where, if you were to ask, or if someone were to ask you how, I guess I'm asking you, what would you say to look out for? What would be those key things to potentially change your perception of, types of artists to bring on? Because, being in the industry, you're surrounded by, and especially at Pixar, you're surrounded by the best of the best. You're surrounded by these really talented people, and especially coming from DreamWorks, you also know there's so much talent everywhere. It's like, what are those things that allow you, and what do you tell yourself when you're looking for this new talent?
I mean, as far as looking for new talent, definitely one thing we're conscious of all the time is diversity in general. I think like people of color, women, like transgender people, like anyone from the LGBT community, like they aren't the first people to get a chance. Like that's kind of the unfortunate truth, and we're working to change that,
Yeah.
So I will often look for artists of color. Like it is a pointed thing I have to do, rather than like relying on, there's obviously tons of talent and DreamWorks, Pixar, all these studios, but a lot of it is a lot of white artists, just to be perfectly honest. So we definitely do try to like reach out to a more diverse group, and if that means that diverse group is newer and they need more experience, like we're happy to have it.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, a lot of the teams that you're working on, how big are these teams? Because they're probably not the size of a, 90-minute feature film. What's it like kind of going down and going into the trenches with everyone on that film, versus a bigger group?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Our Canvas team was somewhere around 30 to 40 people. The number changes because we'll like have one person come on and like do a shot, or another person come on and do something. So it's definitely different. Like we don't have the resources that a major studio would offer.
Yeah.
So building our own pipeline was one thing. Kind of being in the trenches with artists. Most of the artists who are working, they're doing it after working at their 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
Which is same thing I'm doing. So I think it's like being a little more understanding in that, right? Kind of working schedules differently. I mean, I joke all the time that we just don't have a schedule because it just like can schedule something and it just immediately blows up.
Totally. Actually, it kind of leads us into our first question for the audience. I first want to say thank you for all of what you've said already. So thank you, Paige. So our first question from the audience, how does a production manager decide what deadlines to set for the creative department when making an animated feature or animated film?
So on a feature, like at Pixar, I think, so we have like a release date, right? And I'm probably going to get like a good portion of this wrong as far as like, because I've never been a production manager at Pixar or DreamWorks. But we have like our, our kind of like release date or schedule like that says, we're going to have this movie come out in 2021 or 2022, like fall or spring 20, of that time. And then, the producers and the kind of producer, AP, production manager come on, and you start kind of building schedules out from that way. I believe I could definitely be getting some of this wrong.
No, totally. It's something where you have to determine, you need to know your endpoint in order to figure out those midpoints.
Yeah. So we have our man weeks or your budget that you're given, and then you start breaking that down into departments, and then you kind of break it into like how many people you need, when you can start production per department, based on like what the story is looking like versus your end goal. And then it kind of comes to different deadlines within those areas. Does that make sense? Did I explain that right at all?
I think you did. I would agree. It's something where it definitely is to each production. Every single film, every single project is going to be different. And like you said, with the projects you're working on now, there's no deadline. It's like it's loose. It's free flowing, and it's because it's a small film, right? It isn't going to have the same amount of pressure as a major motion picture, as something that needs to actually, make its target date. But deadlines still exist because there needs to be something to work for, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've definitely done several schedules in which I've like scheduled out every shot and like getting, our artists on and off. And then you just kind of have to work with people's availability, if they have vacation. If it's an outside project like Canvas, you're thinking of like how many hours people can actually work versus what you actually need. Yeah. So that's kind of a struggle, a lot more of a push and pull. Whereas like in a studio, like this is their primary job. So you can say like, I need you for this many weeks, like give me your vacation dates. Or if you're planning on, being out, or if you have sick time or whatever, then you can, factor that into the greater equation. To where like if someone's out for 2 weeks, you have, then you need to bring on another animator, another artist or whatever down the road to cover that space. With the short, it's much harder because there isn't just like a pool of people you can pull from. Then it's like reaching out to people and, saying like, hey, can you take this one shot? What's your availability? What's your rate? Like, these are the deadlines we're looking at around that time, but we're willing to work with you. Yeah. So it's a lot more negotiation.
Yeah. And but you can get, like you said, that wide variety of talent. Kind of switching over to our next question, how do you manage emotional frustrations at work between artists and departments? So I think this is asking about, between artists, between departments. We can go both, like between, let's say, like, animation and lighting, or story and edit, versus, what is the frustration between art and production, that through line. So 2 questions out of 1.
Yeah. Yeah. So between, let's say, your department and like production leadership, I think that's always a little push and pull, because they're the ones kind of giving you these bigger deadlines, and it's kind of more within your sphere, being in a department, to talk to the artists, figure out, how they're feeling about what they have on their plates, and negotiating with them as well. Like, is this enough time for this? We have our department heads, like our, directing animator type of position, supervising animator type position, where they'll give us bid days, and then we kind of play with the dates to figure out when they'll be done with their what's on their plate.
Yeah.
And we report those numbers to production. And if that doesn't work out, then, it's kind of having those conversations with the artists and, like, it's always kind of taking the temperature, really, of saying, like, how are you feeling? Do you think you could get this out in, 5 less days, 2 less days? Do you think you're ready to show this for approval? And then kind of going back to production, if that's not the case, and saying, like, hey, like, I'm sorry, we can't do anything, but we'll try our best to keep. It's always like a constant, like, push and pull.
Yeah. It's something where it's like you hope, and I mean, hopefully you strive for having this really great communication within production itself to make it so, even though there's a frustrated corner, you're able to appease, that corner and try and work as much as you can, directly with them before you have to go to the other department.
Yeah, totally. And it's similar to, between departments as well. Like, I think building up those relationships with, like, your fellow coordinators, your fellow managers is really important. Because you're always this intermediary between the artist and the department.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just always finding, like, good communication there is really important.
Yeah. Onto a fun question, because we kept talking about it. What is your favorite thing to bake?
Cookies.
Oh, okay. Okay. Any specific cookie?
I have been trying to master my chocolate chip cookie recipe for months. It has been actual months. I am at the point where a friend of mine and I had talked about a while buying our own vanilla beans and making our own vanilla extract.
Ooh, oh, fancy!
And then splitting it, so I would never run out. So we would never run out. But yeah, chocolate chip cookies are really fun. Chocolate lava cake is really fun to make too. It's like the anticipation of it all is just really fun.
Okay. We'll have a segment at some point that will be all of Paige's baked goods. We'll make that happen.
Yeah,
promise.
If it could look like Chef's Table, that would be awesome.
Yes. Women in animation and baking. Okay, so back to production a little bit, but how do you show your enthusiasm without coming off as desperate, when you're talking to people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think just coming at it genuinely and, like, showing that you want that chance. I think people respond to that, honestly. Like, I don't think there is really desperation. If you're looking to grow, then that's fair. That's not, being desperate. That's showing that you want more and that you're ready for more.
Yeah. It's that authentic self. No one should fault you for being who you are.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so next question would be, what were your favorite parts of working as a production, I guess, producer right now, producer during the development phase of the the animated shorts that you're working on now?
Yeah. For Canvas, my favorite part has actually been production.
Oh, okay.
It's been really cool seeing it all come to life.
Mm-hmm.
Just, like, working with Frank is just great. Like, we have such a good working relationship. So that's really nice. I think, like, we played around with, like, so many ideas. So just seeing it from conception to actual, like, renders now, we finished our final mix, is just like that final mix was probably, like, my favorite part. Because it like really just hit home, like, oh, it's real.
Yeah.
It's here. We're doing it. And in Georgia, like, we're still in development, and we're still, figuring out a lot about the story and the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And it, centers around a Black girl in New Orleans, and a lot of it has to do with music. So we're we're still like playing around with those ideas. So it's just like really fun having brainstorming sessions and like talking through like what the world can look like. Like there's magic and voodoo and like all this, all this stuff. So it's like, it's just really fun. It's fun talking through ideas and seeing new artwork. And like, this is a really early concept. That's on my right, left, on my side. So it's just, yeah, it's like that's the fun part of development. I feel like is you just kind of get to like throw everything against the wall and see what sticks and what works.
Yeah. Oh, that's super awesome. Continuing on the thread of the outside projects, how do you balance time between producing Canvas and also doing your full-time job as a coordinator at Pixar?
Yeah, I do a lot of work for Canvas after hours. Like, a lot of emails are sent after hours. If there is time during the day, like use my lunch break to, send emails, look through things, research things if I need to. It's hard. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not sure I'm doing it efficiently. But I feel like it is, part of that multitasking nature that I have where I'm like, okay, I have a break between meetings. Let me look at this one thing.
Yeah.
Or let me, like text and make sure that this person's like good to go and working on this thing. Yeah. But a lot of it does happen at night after hours. So I just don't sleep. That's the answer there.
But you also have cookies. So
but I also have cookies.
Able to sustain yourself. It works.
Yeah, it works.
Okay. Do you find yourself needing to adjust your working styles depending on the director or the producer of a particular show? So I think this is across all the board, every board.
Absolutely. Yes. Every show is different and special in its own way. I think every director is different. Every producer wants different things. So there's no real, like, the way you did something on another show is definitely not necessarily how you would do it on another show.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you definitely have to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, malleable? No, that's not it.
That could work. Adaptable.
Like yeah. Adaptable. That's what I was looking for. You have to be adaptable. You kind of have to be ready to have anything thrown at you because, every show is different and you kind of never know what you're going to get until you're there.
Yeah. Is it something where, I guess what would be a unique way, going off book here a little bit, but what would be a unique thing that you kind of realized that you had to either adjust or highlight? What was something you didn't expect when working with a particular person? Don't need to name the person, but
I can. I think something maybe I expect, like on the shorts, is I didn't expect to maybe like have as much creative input as I do, like starting off. I think I've never been in as many like a scenario where I've had a lot of creative input on bigger films. So I think that's definitely something I wasn't expecting as much. And the more I got used to it, the more I was like, I'm just giving you all my ideas. And then there's definitely just like, it's like in little things, it's always like, maybe like the way you send an email or the way that a report is formatted or, things like that where you're like, oh, I didn't think that would be important here. But maybe this is to this person or this isn't to that person. So
yeah, it's interesting, figuring out ways to actually make production tangible for an artist. That's something as well, right? You have to constantly potentially, be trying to say, oh, hey, this is the deadline. This is why we got to this point. Are there any type of visual, cues or, visual spreads that you would potentially recommend for anyone that's trying to communicate their schedule to an artist that they're working with?
Like as far as spreadsheets and stuff, or like what are you thinking?
Thinking spreadsheets or potentially different types of, free software like, Google Sheets or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I use Google Sheets for everything. I think it's great. There's a lot of functionality there. I think,
Mm-hmm.
you can add like drop down menus and checklists. I've got tons of drop downs and checklists. I think when we first started Canvas, I made this whole like prod Google spreadsheet with like every shot broken down, and then there was like an assets page, and then there was like a sequence readiness page, and definitely some of it fell off. but but yeah, I mean that's the type of stuff you can definitely use, and it's free, and it's like pretty intuitive. I also really like Asana as well. It's like Asana is a little more visual, which is nice. And you can like put up a timeline and stuff, so that's really easy to be able to show, your director, like, this is how much time we have left. This is how much time we've spent on this.
Yeah.
Do we want to keep doing it?
Yeah.
That type of thing. So yeah, those are both really great programs.
Oh, great. And then I know we talked about your past self and how you were going into science. What would you tell someone who is debating between, a career in whichever they were pursuing and the arts?
Um, I think I would tell people just to do their research to make sure they know what they're getting into. They want to go into the arts, reach out to what type of department you want to be in, reach out to someone from that department. If that's, becoming a layout artist or an animator or story artist, like reach out to those people and really know what you're getting into, because it can and I think yeah, there's so much out there. So I think like really really having that knowledge and being prepared to make that decision is really, really important.
Yeah. Is it something where for students, up professionals who are pursuing their passion, outside of, fighting for what we want, do you have any other words of encouragement that you would want to share with them?
Yeah, I mean, just go for it. Like if you're interested in something, like learn as much as you can. I think there's so many like friendly people that definitely like want to help people. So I think, like and reach out and like go after what you want.
Yeah. Oh, this is awesome. Thank you so much, Paige, for answering all of these questions. This is the end of our Q&A. I want to just take a moment to thank you all of us, everyone here, virtually here, for joining us today for our second episode. And again, thank you, Paige, for being here and for just being you and being honest. Please subscribe to this channel and our social media for future videos. We will see you next time. All right, bye.